are our Frenzy Faves.
Today, our Frenzy Faves is a favorite Twilight Zone episode.
All right, Chris, tell us about the episode we're looking at today.
Thanks, Prof. Today we're looking at Passage on the Lady Anne. This was from Season 4, Episode 17. It was directed by Lamont Johnson, written by Charles Beaumont, based on story Song for a Lady, written by Charles Beaumont. The original air date was May 9th, 1963. And I don't think we've covered any Season 4 episodes before, but we'll get into that in a moment, and which caught us a little bit off guard here. For our cast, we had Lee Phillips, Joyce Van Patten, Wilfred Hyde White, Gladys Cooper, Cecil Kellaway, Alan Napier, yeah, that guy, and Cyril de Levante, yeah, that guy. Yeah, Don Kiefer and Jack Rain. Prof, what happens on Passage of the Lady Anne?
Eileen Ransom wants to go on a honeymoon with her husband of 6 years, Alan. So this is a very late honeymoon they're going on. He has business in London, and she's convinced him to take her with him. However, she wishes to travel by boat, by ship, not by air. She decides on a cruise, and even though the travel agent tries to talk them out of it, they book a 2-week trip on the old scow, the Lady Anne. Now, when they arrive at the dock, they say, the Lady Anne doesn't look bad at all. However, they're met there by an elderly couple that say there must be some mistake. This is a private trip. But they find their papers are in order, and they get on the ship, but not before they're offered $10,000 to get off the ship. They refuse. Then by and by, they get to know the people on the ship. Everyone is elderly and has been traveling on the Lady Anne for years and years. Long ago, they were all honeymooners, but they feel this ship is special, and it's too bad she's going to be decommissioned after this trip. They want these two off the ship, but they are very kind to them, very nice. These are very sweet elderly people. But sadly, Alan and Eileen's relationship is very rocky. He's always working and doesn't seem to care about her. She gets upset that the ship isn't working their romantic magic on them, and they kind of have a conversation over some drinks, and seems like they're breaking up. They have some drinks, and they wander off to see the ship. Now, they're looking at the sea, and Alan is talking and turns around and finds that Eileen is missing. He searches the ship for her, as does the whole crew, but to no avail. And after a long time, he returns to their stateroom to find her in bed. He's overjoyed to have found her, and they have some reconnecting time and ultimately fall back in love. There's a party on board, and they meet the captain, who looks suspiciously like he should be dusting the Batcave. Alan and Eileen are back in love, and that's wonderful. Alan notices the engines have stopped. Suddenly, the captain tells them that they must leave the ship. They'll be put in a lifeboat in the middle of the ocean. An emergency message has been sent, and help is on the way to pick them up. Alan and Eileen watch as the Lady Anne disappears into the mist. And it turns out that the Lady Anne is never seen again. I thought this was a cool and very mysterious story. Now, it's the first double-length episode I've seen, and I wasn't expecting it. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a second. But I love the idea of these elderly people on the ship. They're upset. They've been on the ship forever, and they're upset that it's going to be decommissioned. And they kind of agree amongst themselves that they're going to make it like a ghost ship. They're going to kind of disappear it into the mist. I think that's a really cool idea. And this era of Alan and Eileen getting onto the ship, it just is a very interesting little quirk. As they're being put onto the lifeboat, Alan says to Eileen, I thought they liked us. And Eileen looks at them and she realizes they're saving them. And she says, they do. And I just love that. I thought that was very cool. Now, Joyce Van Patten was Eileen, and she's a famous actress, but she was really good here, really engaging. She's not like a young starlet, but the camera absolutely loves her. And Lee Phillips as Alan was perfect as this very distant husband who's very cold to her. And a couple characters, I don't want to forget Wilfred Hyde White, who played a passenger, and he was really good. And you may remember him as the literary club head in The Third Man, always a great actor. And Cecil Kellaway played the traveling magician in The Mummy's Hand. He's really, really good in that and fantastic in this. Now, I didn't realize this was a double episode. So as I was was kind of watching through. I was, waiting for it to be the tight 22 minutes like it usually is. And I was a little weirded out by the pacing. I was like, this is like taking its time. And I feel like one of these scenes is going to be the last one. But it went on. It's like double the length, and it was fine. It was just my expectation, I think, muddled up the flow of watching it. Chris, what are some of your thoughts about Passage on the Lady Anne?
Thanks, Prof. Like you had some nice trivia there. I'll kind of counter that with some of the stuff that I have. Lee Phillips also appeared in the Twilight Zone episode Queen of the Nile. We had Don Kiefer, who played the travel agent early on. He also appeared in the Twilight Zone episodes It's a Good Life. He was the guy who his head turned into the Jack in the Box. And then he was also in the episode For Magnus with Love. Alan Napier, of course, was Alfred in the 60s Batman TV show. Nice to see him here in something different. And hey, look at this. We had Cyril Delavante. And we talked about all the other episodes he was in The Piano in the House, The Silence, and Penny for Your Thoughts. So we have now covered all of the episodes that Cyril Delavante was in. Here we are.
Great.
Yeah. Prof, you mentioned Joyce Van Patten. I think she's a perfect in this. And she's also could qualify for a perfect quote, that guy, because Absolutely. I know her from numerous guest roles in TV dramas and comedies, but not limited to Hawaii Five-0. She was in an episode with Andy Griffith called I'm a Family Crook, Don't Shoot, where they play some scam artists that get unwittingly get a hold of some mob money and bad things happen. It was great, little bit of a comedic episode, but a great role in that one. She did a two-parter of the Rockford Files, and she was also in a Columbo. Favorite shows from the 70s, and there she is. She appeared in all of them. So that's good stuff there. Joyce Van Patten is very, very fantastic in this one. Yeah, bro, Lee Phillips is good. And just some of the lines and the nuances that they had in this, and when they're lowered on the lifeboat, you think, okay, is Phillips going to actually unhook himself? Because he doesn't necessarily have to, but what's going to happen if he doesn't? But they're resigned to it. And one of the just touching moments is where Phillips says to Van Patten, something like, I hope you're not cold. And she says, I've never been warmer. And I thought, oh man, what a brilliant line. That was so good. And just to see that. Yeah. The camaraderie that they have on the ship is really charming. I like, and it's one of those things, and not everybody gets to do this. Take a bus tour, travel abroad, go on a trip where you're with a travel group. And I know several people, it seems like a million miles away and just out of an imagination. But when I was a little kid, we got to tour Poland on a bus, and we were with other tourists, and we had a nice camaraderie between ourselves. And it was really, really cool. I mean, we'd all have breakfast together, check in with each other. You got to know the other person a little bit, and we shared the same experiences. And if you get a chance to do that, God bless you. And I know some people that it's just unattainable, and I feel sorry for that. And it's something that I can't foresee at the immediate moment. But one of those things in the nuances is the charm and the camaraderie that you have with your fellow travelers. And it's kind of nice. It's one of those things that was depicted here. And I thought that was really, really good and had a little bit of an air of charm. And they noticed that they're the younger couple of the group too, which was kind of interesting when they realized, hey, what's up with that? Like you, Prof, I didn't realize this was a season 4 episode. These were the hour-long episodes. I think, if I'm not mistaken, this might have been one of Robin's suggestions. So we're finally getting around to this one, as where the past episodes were all Robin's suggestions, our mascot of the show. This was a good one. This was a very, very romantic love story. Yeah. If I had a quibble at all, though, it's so hard to, because this is such a charming episode, though. But they're offered a huge sum of money just to say, don't get on this. And I would be really tempted to, if you wave that much money in front of me just to say, don't get on this boat, take another means of travel to get to London. I definitely would consider it. Think of all, you could have with that, unless you know what's in store for you. But boy, I would most people take the sum? I think I would. I don't know if anybody else would, but of course, if they didn't do that, we wouldn't have the show. But
true. And it's 1963, 10 grand.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I can't imagine.
You buy a house with that.
Yeah. Holy cow. But minor quibble, outstanding cast. And I thought this was a great episode. I was kind of weird because I only allotted myself a half hour to watch it. And I'm going like, wait a minute, this is still going on here. This is kind of slight, not necessarily meandering, but I thought we got to kind of amp it up here. And it's from season 4. So here we are. Maybe not the last season 4 episode we'll talk about, but nonetheless, out of all the season 4 hour-long episodes of the Twilight Zone, I thought this was one of the better ones. Not necessarily one you would think of in like the top 10 greatest Twilight Zone episodes, but I thought it had a lot of charm, and it was elevated by a great, outstanding cast.
I agree. And if I have one quibble, it would be when the captain was leading them away to the lifeboat and Cyril Delavante was holding a gun on them. The way that Cyril Delavante was holding the gun was ridiculous. It was like shaking in his hand. Yeah. So that's my one quibble.
Well, I have to hold a prop.
Yeah. So Passage on the Lady Anne is one of our favorite Twilight Zone episodes. Just another comic day. These are our frenzy days.